I actually think that the presence of evil in the world is one of the greatest evidence for the existence of God, not evidence against it. In fact, I was doing a debate on the existence of God against atheism 6 days after the Columbine shooting. And of course, the issue came up then. And I said, I actually believe in God more as a result of what happened there than less. And here's why. I said there are a lot of things you could say about what happened in Littleton, Colorado that Monday morning. If God did not exist, you could say, well, that upset me, or I would never do that kind of thing, or I can't understand why they would ever do this. In other words, you could talk about your feelings all day long. What you couldn't do, it seems to me, is you couldn't call what happened at Columbine High School wicked. But it seems that's exactly what you must say of it. And the reason you can't call it wicked if there is no God is because there is no way of distinguishing objective evil from objective good unless you have a foundation to measure those things from. Lewis said, I would not know what crooked was unless I knew what straight was. So if we say, gee, that was evil, that was wicked, I have to ask, why would you call that evil and wicked? Because it's not the way things are supposed to be. They should have done otherwise. Now notice my language, supposed to be and should have done otherwise. Those words, that language implies a standard that they should have conformed, that they ought to have conformed to, and they didn't. But how do you get should have and ought to and supposed to in a world in which there is no God, in which it's just molecules in motion? You don't get that. And this is why most atheists with intellectual integrity, which includes the guy I was debating against that day, acknowledge that if you have no God, you have no standards for good and therefore no standard for evil, and therefore the problem of evil evaporates in their system. There is no problem of evil. And he was willing to report he didn't like what happened and he would do those things, and to him it was bad, but he couldn't say anything more. He couldn't speak about the actions. He could only speak about his emotional responses. But I think most people were pretty much convinced that those actions were evil. Indeed, one of the strongest arguments against the existence of the kind of God that I believe in is the presence of evil in the world. But that can only be voiced if there is real evil in the world. And two things follow from that. First of all, relativism is a dead-end trip. If you believe in moral relativism, that there is no objective right or wrong, and it's just a matter of you have your trip and I have mine, and who are you to push your morality on me kind of thing, well, then you can't even ask this question because you don't believe of evil in the world. You're out of play. But I think the atheist is out of play as well, because the atheist cannot make sense of evil and good in the world. This only makes sense in a world where there is this absolute standard. And so it turns out that the presence of evil in the world, rather than being one of the best arguments against the existence of God, I actually think is an argument in favor of the existence of God. This is the way C.S. Lewis dealt with it in the beginning of his fine little book, Mere Christianity. And many Christian philosophers and thinkers have taken the same tack. If there is morality in the world, there must be a God to ground that. And I think that's a good argument. Now, of course, that doesn't make the problem of evil go away. What it does do is it suggests that some answers are not going to work. The relativist is out of play, and I think the atheist is out of play. The theist still has to make sense of this, just for intellectual honesty.